It's just to be put back together because I was playing God. Essentially, I was trying to be in control of my life and try to cut off being open to life. And so that was the purpose of my reversal. It was really to say, okay, God, you're in control. You take it from here because I can't control this.
Hey, I'm Jim Havens. Good to meet you. I host a radio show called The Simple Truth, where we pursue the good, true, and beautiful and proclaim the life-giving reality of Jesus and his Catholic Church. Stick around. If you like it, give it a thumbs up and let us know what you think in the comments below.
Our guest today is Cesar Ramirez. He is a Catholic husband and father of 5. He has over 20 years experience as a wedding DJ, also an e-commerce web engineer and multipreneur. He also serves as the 4th degree Deputy Grand Knight. Cesar, thank you for being with us. How are you today?
Doing great, Jim. Thanks for having me on the air here.
We've got a story to share here, which is such a blessed story to hear. And we always begin at the beginning. So let's start with childhood. What was your early life like, your family, the culture that you grew up in?
I grew up very secular, yet very conservative. It was kind of interesting. My dad's one of those old school type of Catholics where we just kind of spoke about our faith life on Sundays. Went to church every Sunday. He knew the bare minimum. And so that was pretty much my childhood of knowing my Catholic faith. Everything else was pretty much just, growing up in public school, never really got to experience any type of Catholicism outside of my parish fellowship or anything like that. So pretty much all the way through my marriage life.
We like to follow the sacramental graces. So would you have been baptized as an infant? Would you have received First Holy Communion around 2nd grade and then First Penance Confession along with that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I did all that, got baptized and then got my first communion and then confirmation in high school. And then pretty much fell away. I would say around the college years. I still attended mass. I had to go to mass during my college year formation, but I wasn't a very, I did everything you're not supposed to do as a Catholic. Put it that way. One of the toughest parts is my parents kept me very secluded from the outside world up until about high school. Then I started dating some high school girlfriends that I was trying to actually pull into mass with me on Sundays, and they weren't having it. It just wasn't a good. It was hard. It was hard for me to actually meet a good, faithful Catholic gal. So when I went to college, I still attended mass on Sundays. Yet I was still involved in the world in so much, kind of falling with the secularism of what's happening out there. I'm sure you've seen what's even more prominent right now amongst the young teens. But yes, I went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. I kind of got exposed to things that I wasn't accustomed to. Much of that was just secularism in its greatest form. In my personality is I'm very vocal, but yet I'm very attracted to, I guess, the bad during that time. It was so easy for me to just get sucked into that because it felt fun. And then, of course, I paid the price afterwards of guilt.
Mm-hmm. I guess the college years then and after, at what point did you end up meeting your wife? Was that in college or was that sometime afterwards?
Yeah, I had a long distance relationship with my high school sweetheart, let's put it that way. And then she went to a very liberal school. And so we broke up somewhere around my second year in college. And then my best bud from back home introduced me to, I told myself I'm not going to do this long distance thing again. But I got to meet my wife because my best bud from high school, he actually saw that we were both on the same track. We were both going to college. And believe it or not, out of her 6 siblings, she was the only one that actually attended the same parish I did back home. So we had that as a common factor, which was super simple for me to just keep pursuing that relationship. We dated towards my senior year. She was very advanced in the sense that she was actually homeschooled during her high school formation. So I saw her more mature. This is a clue for your homeschoolers out there, more mature as a woman than any woman my age. So I said, I'm going to pursue this relationship. And we ended up, I graduated in 2002. So we ended up getting married about a year later, in October. And that was perhaps the most touching part of my life because she's been there with me. We dated for about 2.5 years, almost 3 years, but she was there through some of my tough times coming out of college, not being able to find the career life. I thought I was in control of my path, going to a school, getting my degree as an engineer, thinking I was going to pursue this engineering path that didn't happen.
I guess help us to understand what was going on in your life of faith in that time. How deep was it? What was going on within your heart?
One thing my parents always put in the back of my head is, don't ever move in with the girl that you're dating. That's something that they've instilled in me since I was a kid. So that's something that stuck with me. So I knew that the first thing I wanted to do was be able to afford a house in an affordable place. So we found the house together, and then we got married, and then it was nice to kind of go into that house on our marriage night. So we both got married at the same parish. My parents got married too in Escondido, California, at St. Mary's. We did attend, I believe, some classes before our marriage class, kind of help us in some of our formation. But we were kind of like very much a lukewarm Catholic family, where we would baptize our children. We had our first three sons, and we baptized them, but we were kind of we didn't know it was actually a mortal sin until later on in our 30s and 40s that not attending mass is a mortal sin, right? So we didn't know that. We were kind of like lukewarm. We kind of did it if we could, and not if we couldn't. There was a point in my life that I realized I can't do this on my own, where I think the financial aspect of me chasing different business ventures and things working out, some things didn't until something did. My wife and I have to share the story because it was I thought we were doing something good, but it was a very dark time in my life. We actually got sucked into this concept of the new age thinking, right? Of self-meditation and business, and trying to form our kids in the same path, trying to relax the anxiety, all that stuff. And we realized that, that stuff actually led us to a very dark place in our lives. And so what came out of that was a business venture, which I thought in the society's aspects, financially, I was doing well. But it wasn't until a couple of guys in my team that I had built in this sales organization started to really be like greedy and start stealing from my business. And so that led me to a gentleman here in town, in Temecula, that actually pulled me into his office. He wasn't Catholic. He was a non-denominational Christian. He says, "Hey, dude, like, what's your walk like with Jesus? I'm going to build this business, but I need to know that your love for Christ is in the right place." So I'm grateful for that gentleman. As a matter of fact, his name is Jim too. But it was a very dark time, like I said, in my life, because I thought I was on a path of doing something good. But it really wasn't until I realized, you got to let Jesus take the wheel, because that took a lot of weight off my back. Once I got into that path, I said, okay, so now I was seeking fullness of truth. Like, what is the truth? So we have all these different denominations. So what's the fullness of truth? So I reached out to my younger brother. He actually led me to Matthew 16:18. That's where my journey started, when Jesus gave the authority to Peter. So I went back to Jim and I said, "Hey, Jim, like this is where the fullness started. This is where it started. It wasn't 1,500 years later that Martin Luther divided us up. So if you're telling me about sola scriptura and all this good stuff, this is where all this stuff was coming into my head." And I was learning all this stuff. And I didn't like history in school, by the way. So if you guys don't like history, hey, that was me. But when it came to the Catholic faith, I needed to really study my faith, and I really did need to learn history, because I was getting attacked by Jim. He says, "Where does it say Catholic in the Bible?" I said, "Dude, that's a great question. Let me go figure it out." And so I learned through God bless him, the Knight of Columbus over at my home parish at the time, led me to RCIA. And I went to RCIA, and this is where my journey started with media and radio. And I got to meet great folks like you, Jim. And there was these two couples there that were running RCIA, and I told her my story. I said, "I really need to learn my faith because I'm getting attacked. I need to know how to defend myself. If I'm going to be a good father to my children, I need to step up." By the way, men, it's the men that lead the family. I always thought it was my mom, because my mom did it that way. My dad was kind of like the quiet guy behind the scenes, but they say, and I learned this on Catholic radio, if men don't step up, less than 17% of the children follow path. But if the father steps up in the family, the children, I heard it was like closer to 90% actually follow what the dad did. So that was a big number for me. I said, okay, I better step up. So I went to RCA, started studying. She led me to Catholic radio. At the time, it was called Immaculate Heart Radio out here in California. And there was three really big shows that I listened to. One was a gentleman named Chris Bear, and he was a pro-life guy out of Texas. Mother Miriam, which I believe is here on this station, she led me to the Rosary. And then the other, it was the Terry and Jesse show. And so Mother Miriam, I reached out to her because I knew she was in business for herself. I said, "Mother, I need some help, Sorry, guys, I get some water. I said, I don't know where he wants me." And she says, Go pray the rosary and see where he leads you. I tell you what, Jim, that rosary changed my life.
Wow.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. That was that was a pivotal point in my life where, the next day he delivered, and I was fighting with the Lord. I said, God, you know my heart. I love being an entrepreneur, but if you want me to be at a job, I'll be at a job. So I buckled down, I surrendered, and I worked in the biotech industry as an engineer. So I studied, as my background is in engineering, and and he's taken care of my family financially ever since. But in my heart, I'm always an entrepreneur, but he knows that. So interesting story from that path of that job. I was there for 3 years. The gentleman that started that company previously worked for another company, and I did after the rosary. My family, we surrendered and said, okay, I'm gonna take a break from this because it was stressing me out. Let's do a St. Joseph Novena. And for those that are struggling financially, please look into the novena. I just hopped on YouTube and that's what we did. And guess what? A job showed up at the time. This is during pre-COVID. This is like 2019. And this cannot be an accident. The company itself was based out of Oceanside. There was only 4 engineers there, like myself, but the headquarters was actually in Israel. So they told me they're going to fly me to Israel, the Holy Land, and they're going to train me on what we do in the biotech industry. And I had the ability to go see all the popular spots in Israel at the time. I went to see, I think the first place we went to Mount Tabor up at the very top of the mountains. But my point is that there's no way I could ever do that on my own. That was all him, This was just part of my journey. During the same time, what was happening in my family life, I started seeing a change in my kids. We started going to what some of you may know as if you're lukewarm Catholic, you know where I'm going with this. The Novus Ordo type masses that weren't practiced in fullness of. We were attending very much. There's 3 major parishes in our area. I won't mention any names, but I will say that there was a formation teacher that wasn't doing what she was supposed to be doing, bringing some foul stuff to my kids' home. So I said, okay, as the father of this family, I know that I'm gonna have to draw the line in the sand. I got to take you to a better parish. So we started attending Holy Martyrs somewhere around 2018, 2019, around the same time. And then the Holy Spirit smacked me upside the head because I started seeing the big families there. I'd never met families that actually practice the faith like Holy Martyrs families were doing. They had, I think our biggest kids are like 15 kids. Others were like, I think 13 kids. We have a family of 13 in our parish as well. And so it was like tears just like came into my eyes because I started seeing like, wow, these Catholics know what they're doing. They're actually practicing the faith. I've never met such reverent and humble Catholics. And no knock to Novus Ordo because I know there's some good parishes out there that do it right, but just Holy Martyrs. I mean, give a big shout out to them and Father Vardis, who kind of runs the parish there, and 3 others in the area have really formed not myself only, but my whole kids and my family. It's gotten to the point where my kids are now telling me, hey, Dad, you better learn all your prayers. It's pretty awesome. There was a show during my formation, my reversion process, the Terry and Jesse show, and they mentioned about men. Listen very closely. If you're being called in your heart and tugging at this, I was listening to the show from Terry and Jesse, and they were saying that men should not practice contraception. And if you had a vasectomy, pray about it, but try to reverse it. At least to be put back together the way God made you. So I started calling different places in the area, and there's no way I could afford it in California. It was so expensive. And it wasn't until I arrived at Holy Martyrs that I got to meet a gentleman, Wes Schaefer, and I'll give him a shout out because if it wasn't for him being a networker in business, he was able to connect me to the right person in Texas to go have this done. And I had a reversal. 2019, nothing happened until about COVID timeframe. I lose my job. And this is where God really challenges you. He's like, okay, I need you to trust me. I lose my job, and then my wife gets pregnant with our 4th child after 2 years, right? That was a 2-year gap there. And I said, okay, that's a God wink. All right, we're going to trust you, Lord, And so here we are, 3 boys first, a 10-year gap. My son Emilio was born. And then number 5, she was just born in December 15th. my first daughter, Monica, and she's just the heart of our family. So I have to share that story because, being part of the pro-life march, it hit me. I said, I can't really be pro-life if I'm not open to life. And that really hit me. That's what that's what I felt in my heart. It's like I'm being a hypocrite. So that's what I got called to do. And I got to tell you, Jim, it's been the best thing. It's 10x my marriage in a good way. My wife and I have a better relationship. I'm less agitated, if you will, and our love life has become better as a couple because we understand our faith life than it becoming a recreational sport.
I think it all starts with that first rosary. So Mother Miriam says, hey, go pray the rosary. And if you don't know what to do, great advice. And so what do? You draw closer to our Lord through Our Lady. Anything you can share about that specific moment what was the disposition of your heart as you prayed? Because it just seems so fruitful, that Holy Rosary that you prayed on that day.
Yeah, we did it as a family. Obviously, I wasn't an expert, so we hopped on the YouTube because that's the best thing I knew what to do, and just followed one of the videos there until the point that we were doing this every night here on after the gift came of a financial blessing. Literally the next day, there's nobody who can work quicker than God, right? And so we just kept praying to the point where my boys were like, you know what, Dad, let's stop hearing somebody else say the rosary. Let's just do it together. And so that's where I wanted to be, in that position. We've done Divine Mercies together. And it's just novenas as a family. It's really just brought us closer together. And I see that in all my kids. And I don't know, it's so simple to say, yet I think a lot of us as men may not be comfortable if we haven't done it before.
This powerful testimony of hearing Terry and Jesse on the radio and them challenging men if they've committed this immoral act of vasectomy, that they would go and have it reversed, at least be made whole. There are probably other men listening who are in a similar situation that maybe this is the first time they're hearing this, that this is actually an immoral action. It's possible that there are people that are even Catholic, but not even understanding the church's moral teaching on this. Did you understand it at the time that you had the vasectomy? What was going on there? Was it a sense that, again, this feeling of wanting to control things out of sort of a fear of the future, or just thinking like we can't have any more children? Can you speak to sort of what was surrounding that decision? And then was there also, to go along with that reversal action, was there also a reversal of the heart, not just in that exterior action, but also in a repentance and a contrition, in a good confession? Open up the floodgates of your heart to all the graces that God had been pouring out.
Yeah, great question. So I did go confess it to the previous home parish that I was at, and I didn't feel connected. I didn't feel like I was fed, I guess, what I wanted to hear. It almost seems like it was like, hey, every man does it eventually in their life, and it just kind of, that I didn't get fed the calling to reverse it at that point. It wasn't until I would say somewhere. Let me take a step back. So my third son, Luke, was born. It was 2011, and my friend, who's really close to me, he's not a Catholic. He's a Christian of another parish denomination, and he just says, "Hey, man, you don't want that. You don't want that third child. Just stop at number 2." And it happened to be my wife was pregnant with number 3 at the time, but I kind of got nudged from this gentleman, and then my brother-in-law was going to do it, so I kind of just became like this. Everybody else is doing it, so. Let me tell you guys, we're the only ones out of my wife's side that has 6 siblings having children of her siblings. So that everybody else kind of closed off. But my kids are getting spoiled now, my 2 younger ones, because nobody else is having children. But you can see the light that these children bring to my sister-in-laws and my brother-in-laws. It's like you're giving them a reason to, hey, stop chasing that life that, I see them going out to travel, they go on vacations because they're seeking something more, because they're trying to unplug. For me, I'm happy to be working from home at my career job, and then seeing my daughter every single morning, it just brightens up my day. And I tell my wife all the time, I tell her, wow, we're so blessed with these beautiful children that just warms up everybody's hearts, not just us. It's like I'm sharing them with my family, my parents, and it's like it breathes life, and it gives you a purpose to continue to grow, continue to be open to life because of that reason. But it wasn't always like that. In my earlier years when I wasn't connected to the faith, I was just like trying to seek, and I'm trying to be in control of my life. And I kept making dumb financial mistakes. I kept following the wrong path. And it was just, you're seeking something that you'll never find fulfillment. And I don't think you can ever find your fulfillment in things or even money, because it's just not, it'll never be enough. And I would say if you're going to leave behind any legacy, it's not going to be materials, because guess what? That's going to go to some type of donation house. It's going to be your children. And I think that's the best way to show the love of your children, and saying, hey, what's my son going to say when he grows up and says, Dad did a sacrifice for me so that he can continue, so I could be here in this world,
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. But awesome. I do want to share that, for those men that are thinking about it, to answer that question of possibly looking into that option, reach out to Greg and Julie over at the, I believe it's the Alexander House. I got put on the phone with him. We spoke for an hour. It's like I knew the guy for forever. And he led me to this place in Texas that was able to do that reversal. And so what helped me through the process was actually doing a rosary. And I knew it was the right place at the right time, because the doctor that was assisting me, and God bless that doctor, Dr. Rader, which I believe he retired during COVID, but there's other options that Greg can point you to. And if it wasn't for him, I mean, that's just the hands of God working right there for you. Because I didn't think it was possible after a reversal. I think it's a really small percentage chance to be. But you got to remember what Jim said earlier is true. It's just to be put back together, because I was playing God. Essentially, I was trying to be in control of my life and trying to cut off being open to life. And so that was the purpose of my reversal. It was really not the children are the plus. It's the God's divine grace to us, right? Our gifts to us. But it's really to say, okay, God, you're in control. You take it from here, because I can't control this anymore.
Cesar, anything that you can share with us of even then entering into the graces that God has for you, living now in a life of sanctifying grace as we are called to? That's just really the beginning. That's just really the starting point. What about difficulties even for the faithful Catholic man, the trials that come? Anything that you can share with us there?
Yeah, I mean, I live in one of the most expensive states in I guess the United States, right? California. And so I'm always looking towards my fellow brotherhood of Catholic men that have large families, and especially the one with 15. I was like, I said, Pat, how do you do it, man? Like a job can only pay so much, that you're qualified for. And so I'm seeing a lot of these men become entrepreneurs. So I'm really trying to study where he's calling me to be in that path. I just don't know where he wants me yet. So, because I know financially I have to, if I'm going to continue growing the family, I need to, bring more income in. So I would say that's, if you guys are there, if you're struggling, I would say lean on not in the worldly folks out there, because a lot of folks that are not Catholic based, I will tell you, can lead you in the wrong place. And I've been around, so-called non-Catholics, they're Christian, but they're not Catholics, and they've ripped off folks. And so it's not a place that you want to be. But that's been my biggest hurdle and my biggest prayer that I ask folks that are listening, keep me in prayer, because that's the path I'm kind of going down, this narrow road of it's very difficult to let go of what I used to know, right? It is without the Catholic faith as a foundation. It was more of the new age positive thinking, like you said, law of attraction, all that just sucks you in. So trying to separate myself from all that stuff and trying to rethink in the Catholic sense about business and life and how I can serve him more. There is a pretty cool thing that happens when you're on this path. You'll feel the attacks from the enemy. That's a given. But there's doors that open up that you get to meet great men. Like you said, I got to meet you, Jim, through this ministry of pro-life, just serving audio. I didn't think this was going to come out of it. So I'm grateful for you for bringing me on board. But there's another gentleman, this Italian gentleman out of LA, that's a movie producer, that allowed me to serve and play in a role in a movie. And I was just serving and providing some wood for the movie. He was able to do the crosses and do the wood on this land for this movie called Eucharistic Miracles. During that process, as I was helping him out, I got to learn more and fall in love more about the Eucharist. Like, I mean, how many of you, what do they say? A very small percentage of folks actually believe in the Holy Eucharist. It becomes the living body of Christ. Like, I didn't know that as a lukewarm Catholic. Like, I thought it was always, but I brought it to this gentleman, Angelo. I said, hey, Angelo, did you know about this gentleman? Because I'm an IT guy. I said, do you know about this guy named Blessed Carlo Aquinas? And he didn't know who he was. And so he looks him up. He's like, we're going to make a movie about this. And that was it. It opened up the door and I became involved. But it's just stories like those that allowed, being surrendering and being open to just where he wants you next. Obviously, when you grow your family, you gotta financially take care of them. And so going back to Pat's story, he says there's always a loaf of bread for that next child. And so that's kind of what kind of opened me up. So Catholic men that practice the faith and are in the faith, they always know how to say the right stuff. For men that are or women that are listening to this, plug your men in, because I think that my wife led me to a guy named Jim, I believe it was Jim Curry. It's been a while since I read it, but he really broke it down, because he used to convert Catholic men because they were so easy and weak on the Bible. And he says it wasn't until he walked into a Catholic mass that it converted him. And so knowing your faith, I think it's number one, why you're doing something, and fully believing in your heart that, this is the bride of Christ. This is the church that Jesus established. I think has really helped me to grow my family. And that was important for me as a father. So I'm just really grateful that God put a wonderful woman in my life.
So speak a little bit about the holy sacrament of matrimony. So you guys were married. Obviously, the journey it changed throughout the marriage. In terms of what was your wife's reaction to this change in you, and what were the fruits in the marriage?
Well, she pretty much was on this path before I was on the reversion path, because I was still kind of stuck and I couldn't let go of my business mindset, and I was fighting that for a while. So my wife, kind of also, we kind of grew together. I mean, we've always grown together, but one of the things that I think is important in any relationship is communication. And so she was always pretty strong. As soon as she makes a decision, she sticks to it. So she stated that, you can't look down that path anymore. You really got to start focusing on this path. And so, it was like pulling teeth in the beginning, but I eventually, I'm sure she's a great prayer warrior, because he softened my heart, and I was able to surrender eventually, to let go. But it was tough in the beginning. I'm not going to lie. It was very difficult to let go of some of the earthly things that I was attached to before making that fullness. But once I did, once I got plugged in, I had enough tools in my tool belt to defend the faith and to protect my own family, because I don't want my kids to be challenged like I was challenged. There's times where I almost got sucked in by a Mormon, because I love this family structure, but I know in my heart that it wasn't, they don't have the Trinity, so I can't go down that path. And I know that all other Christian faiths don't have the Eucharist, and that's what I fell in love with. It's like, since Jesus instituted that, there's no other way. There's no other place I could run to. So I had to make it work. I had to figure it out. I think this is what helped me. So if you guys aren't there yet to fully surrender to maybe a traditional type of mass, the Cursillo movement, because it worked for us, I will give a shout out to that. It was a weekend, 3-day retreat that allowed me to be surrounded by other men. And I'd never met men like this that were actually loving the faith. You got to remember, I was around secular men. And then my wife did hers 2 weeks later, her Cursillo, and she lived her Cursillo. And I believe that's what really strengthened our marriage. That was the beginning formation of us now understanding, okay, we know more about our faith, the fullness of our faith. Let's continue that path. And so these were baby steps that I can't ignore, because that shift in the marriage life really, I think should be almost like a prerequisite. If you're not brought up like I was in a traditional mass, start with baby steps. Start looking for things like these shows that would inspire you, and share these shows with those that may be fallen. The rosary, the scapular as well. For those that are falling away from the faith, use the green scapular. I heard it converts souls. And it actually worked on my son, believe it or not. So I was worried that my middle son Adam at the time was going to fall away, and so I stuck one under his bed. I believe it was a green scapular, but I heard it converts souls, and it does. I mean, he loves his faith, and pray for him. Pray for my boys. I really hope they're on the path of finding the appropriate Catholic woman that they're seeking for at their young adult years. So
yeah, definitely pray for Cesar and his family. Anything that you want to share with fathers in terms of maybe their children are a little bit younger, or maybe they're older, and maybe you think about your relationship with your own dad. Is there anything on this feast of St. Joseph, any message that you have that you want to share with fathers today?
Custody of the eyes. Work on that. If you're struggling in any space or form of that, that's something that I really had a nip during my reversion. It wasn't until I fully did a full confession that the priest says, how does it feel taking that away from your wife? And so if you're there, if you're being distracted by imagery and it's bothering you because it's leading your soul into mortal sin, understand you got to fight that off. That's number one and foundation of anything in a relationship, because it's going to strengthen your marriage life, because you're going to give the fullness to your wife, right? You're not, this is a family show, so I won't say any words, but you're not giving away your manhood to something that's outside of your wife, if that makes sense. I get rocks thrown at me from my own siblings that I'm too radical, right? But it's the Holy Spirit that's in my heart that I can't stop talking about what you found. And when you find this happiness, you see it in others, not just your own siblings, but you see it in others that are missing it. And so if you want that fullness of completion, and you lay your head down at night saying, gosh, I really did everything I could to serve him, and then go inspire. I mean, we're called to just go evangelize. So at any moment I get, you're right, Jim. I do speak about my faith, and I talk about my reversal, because it's very important to understand that, wow, this guy, I've never met anybody that went the other way. I always met people that go the other way, but not this way. And so you're kind of like a unique story in this lost world that's inspiring many men. So God bless you guys on this St. Joseph, and thanks for having me on the air, Jim.
Was that a helpful video for you? I sure hope so. That's why we do this show, to help real people get real results, advancing in the way, the truth, and the life that we're made for. It's called The Simple Truth. It's a radio program Monday through Friday, and we live stream it right here on this channel. Make sure to subscribe, like, and share if you would be so kind. And if you like that last video, here's another one I think you might get a lot out of.